Miss D.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Slim Nations One-on-Ones Experience. I'm James Slim Overton, and I am your host. And to this evening, we have a special panel, and some of them you'll be familiar with that was on our Portsmouth Coffee Talk show, which we will be streaming live on Portsmouth Coffee Talk's channel, as well as this channel you're watching, the Slim Nations One-on-One Experience, and two of our Facebook pages. So if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you share the show as well. I'm sure you will benefit from some of the conversations we will have here tonight. And we have Lewis Bracy here, who is a frequent guest on our show and sometime a guest host. And Lewis, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine,
Homie,
fine.
my homie from Portsmouth, Virginia, and in the neighborhood of Truxton. But anyway, Lewis, if you will introduce the guests, we have some, and we're waiting on Gloria Dent to come on, and I'll check and see if she's having any issues getting on while you do that
Okay,
introduction.
well, I'm gonna do this is gonna be easy. Uh, Mr. Snowden has been on before, and for the audience who may be new to him, I'd say that Mr. Snowden is a person who gets things done in Anne Arundel County and in the state of Maryland. He's always a little skimmish about taking credit for stuff, but I don't let him get away with that. I say, no, man, you're gonna get some credit. So Carl Snowden is the person who, if you want to get something done, especially in our county, that's the man you see, not a congressman, not a senator, not a councilman. You see Carl Snowden. That's one thing. Now I want to
The
move on.
Honorable
Yeah.
Carl Snow.
Now I want to move on to Mark Chang. Now I have a million stories about Mark, uh, but
Just tell
Mark
one.
is the kind of person who he's the kind of politician that that we should have more of. What I mean is, when he tell you he can do something, he does it. If he can't do it, he be honest enough and tell you that he can't do it. Uh, Mark ran. He's the first Korean to win an elected office in our county. Uh, I remember he was on the street with his father, waving down cars at a time when he ran. I said, no way in hell he's going to win. There's not enough Koreans around here to win. so, but but this man was very he did what you call shoe leather. He went and knocking on doors and called to tell you about a mayor in Annapolis who won by using shoe leather. Didn't have any kind of advertising. He knocked on people's doors. Well, Mark Chains is the person that if I want something done on the legislative level, I call one person, and that's Mark Chain. And he's also the go-to man for our Speaker of the House, the first woman, and the first black woman Speaker of the House. That's her key guy right there. And I see Miss Dent is on. Miss Dent is a person you saw her bio, and I just want to zero in on one part of her bio. You're looking at a combat veteran there that served this country, and she is currently, as you know, on a school board. She's very much involved in virtually every single thing that happens in this county, whether she's dealing with it exactly or not. And one of the persons who makes sure she's at everything is Carl Snowden, because she's on Carl Snowden's list of people who got to be there, and that's just a brief part of what she does. But one of the main things that one of the schools that is close and dear to my heart when I first came here, when I lived in Pioneer City, was Van Brockley Elementary School, and Miss Denton had a hell of a lot to do with the young people there, making sure things arrived there for the young people, everything from recreation to study items. She basically is a very hardworking, very community uh, um, connected person, and I'm looking forward to her and her input because, like I say, I asked her to come on, because one of the other delegates, he wasn't available, and he recommended Ms. Dent. And I said, hell yeah, that's that's an easy choice. So so she's here, that's stepping in for Mike Rogers, who is the other delegate. And and I want to close with this. If you notice, I tell you all the time, people need to know who their delegates are. And from the delegates, they need to know who their council people are. They need to know who's on the school board. And I'm one of those people. I have them all in my phone book right here on this phone, every one of them. So this is what you learn from dealing with Carl Snowden. One of the things Carl Snowden told me in the beginning is always get these people's phone numbers. Always let them know who you are. And I've kept that ever since. So that's a brief introduction to the panelists today, and also have Mark on because he can talk about how funding affects the on the state level, and Gloria can talk about how things on the school level and in the community level. And Carl Snowden has this great historical mind where he could talk about all types of legislations that have occurred in the past, and just also how devastating this big bad bill is. There's nothing beautiful about it. So with that, I turn it back over to you.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention something else about Dr. Dent, and she is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And I let a lot of your sisters know that you will be on tonight, so hopefully they'll be on supporting you. Uh, I wanted to say, I wanted to tell Carl Snowden, the Honorable Carl Snowden, that I make shorts after our videos, and I made a short. I think I sent it to you. Made a short the last time you were on, and put it out there on the YouTube world, and it gathered almost 5,000 views, just alone on what you said there. And I usually do that so I can bring people back to the full uh, the full video. Just wanted to let you know whatever you said back then. I'll have to listen to it again, but whatever you said resonated to over almost 5,000 people, at the time, and it came pretty quickly. But anyway, I'm sure we'll get some of the same responses tonight as we have this discussion. Uh, and I'm going to, out of respect for all of your titles, I might go back and forth between doctor and your first name, uh, if you don't mind, because we said this is going to be a conversation, and hopefully, if I do call you by your first name, you're not offended by that. But I'll try to respect your titles here today. Uh, Honorable Snowden, now, I'm gonna let you start off tonight because one of the main things we're going to talk about, or we're talking about, is the big budget bill or bad bill, as Lewis mentioned, and that's the way I promoted the show, the big bad budget, and we want to talk about the effects of if it gets out of the House, what we're going to have to look forward to as far as the effects of people. We already know because it's been talked about, and we're still facing this bill. But what are we going to have to do going forward if this thing is passed and the president signs it like he wants to do?
Is that a question, sir?
Yes, yes, it was. I'm sorry if it didn't come out that way, but yes, that was a lead off for you to start the conversation on. Really.
Well, President Trump's bill, which he calls the big, beautiful bill, is really a bill that will do incredible damage. But what most people don't realize, and I hope your listeners and viewers understand, the vast majority of people who are going to be hurt should this bill go through, believe it or not, are Trump supporters. When you look at where programs like Medicaid, you will discover that these are programs that are beneficial to poor people. And as it turns out, many of the poor people in this nation are in states like Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, etc. And what I believe it's Paul Rand He's a United States Senator for Kentucky. But people will be mostly hurt of people who voted for Trump. They assumed that when they were voting for Trump, that Trump was going after what is called the other, immigrants, blacks, gays, etc. What they didn't realize was that this particular bill affects them. 2 points, and I'll end on this, and anybody who want to check this statistic out can do so. The vast majority of people on welfare in this country are white people. The vast majority of people on Medicaid is white people. If this particular bill goes through, it's going to be largely and disproportionately white people that will be impacted. And I think if the bill goes through, it will be a catalyst for a huge turnaround in the midterm. Most people don't understand who the bill affects.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy that even with all that information, and I'll go to you, Delegate Kane, because with all that information, we still have representatives from different areas, and some areas that will really be affected are still going to vote to pass this bill. And I know they are hearing it from their constituents, even though they voted one way in the beginning, thinking that it wouldn't affect them. But all the information and everything that we see now is leaning toward them really knowing it's going to affect them. But their representatives are still pushing this thing through or coming on and trying to normalize, different uh, parts of the bill, like, and even saying things like you'll get over it or just wait down the road. But by down the road, what about now? How is this going to affect me now? When if I need operations or certain things that I need now that are planned to be cut, how can you know, I'm just trying to understand, how somebody can be a representative and overlook that when it's directly affecting their constituents. Can you
Absolutely.
explain
Yeah, thanks,
that
Mr.
as a politician yourself or elected
Sure.
representative yourself?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mr. Overton and Mr. Swin, for having us on. And it's great to join fellow Marylanders, Lewis and Dr. Den and the Honorable Carl Snowden being on this. And for Maryland, we wish all the Virginians out there, a wonderful July 4th week. And there's a lot of commonalities that the state of Maryland and Virginia has, is that, as mentioned earlier, that our state legislatures, they have the Virginia State Senate, then we have the Maryland State Senate, and then also we have the Virginia House of Delegates and also the Maryland House of Delegates. And those two states, Virginia and Maryland, are one of the few states that still have the House of Delegates. So that's something that we have in common. But prior to the show actually starting, Mr. Slim and myself were talking about how the election cycles work. And I know my fellow Virginia lawmakers are always kind of envious of Marylanders in many ways, but one of the other reasons that they're envious too is that they've got to run on every 2-year cycles versus in Maryland, we run every 4 years. But I would say that with regards to what's going on right now in Washington, D.C., that we see Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries really described it. It's really a misnomer about the big, beautiful bill. It's a big, ugly bill. And we're seeing what's going on as far as what happened in the United States Senate, that it was a very slim margin that passed, and now it's going back to the House, and now we're seeing it stalled. And so I think that there's a lot of pressure out there, and constituents are really putting the pressure on Republican lawmakers, United States senators and United States Congress people to, really vote against this bill. And some of the changes that did occur from a state's perspective is that when the bill got over to the Senate, the United States Senate, actually 99-1 Senate, the U.S. Senate voted to one of the things give state rights as far as artificial intelligence. AI is something that's really big right now, and now something where the United States Senate actually took that out of bill and gave the rights back to the state. And I think that's important for, as the bill continues to work its way through the process, over back to the House to see what other possible changes are there. But I believe that because of the pressure that is really all around the country, all around the nation from the constituents on their lawmakers, and especially in those areas that Mr. Snowden described, those areas that voted for Trump, those states that voted for Trump, and those congressional districts. And so I think that it's important for the constituents to keep on emphasizing that. As far as the state of Maryland, we really try to take a proactive approach, and we did take a proactive approach prior to the current president taking office. There's actually analysis that were provided from the Department of Legislative Services and other agencies within the state of Maryland, and we are already projecting about $1 billion negative adverse effect on the state of Maryland. And because of that, prior to the legislative session starting, we really worked on fiscal policies and also other types of public policies to try to help mitigate the situation that we knew was going to happen in Washington, D.C. Prior to this current administration taking over, Maryland really, and also Virginia, Northern Virginia specifically, really prided itself on the fact that we had so many federal assets in our states, and also just really the amount of presence of the federal workforce and our proximity to Washington, D.C., and how we were really, in past economies, kind of insulated from the adverse macroeconomic effects. But now with this, it's really been a negative effect. And to give you some real numbers as far as the state of Maryland, unclassified positions, approximately 200,000 individuals have federal wages that are filed through the state of Maryland. That equates to tens of billions of dollars to our state. And as of right now, thousands of Marylanders, unfortunately, who were employed by the federal government lost their jobs. And so that's negative effects on our states, negative effect of our economy, of families being able to provide for their children, for just investments in the local areas. So we as a state, what we did was during the legislative session really gave more power to our state's Attorney General, Anthony Brown, to be able to file lawsuits and deal specifically with the adverse effects of what President Trump is doing to across the country, but also within the state of Maryland. And really got to give a lot of credit to our Attorney General Brown for really working with other states across the country to be able to address the really bad decisions that are coming from really 20 minutes down the road from us in Annapolis. And also the different programs, whether it be Medicaid or SNAP or education, these are really dire consequences that would happen. In Maryland, there will be 56,000 adults affected by any cuts to Medicaid, and that equates to about $317 million. And our SNAP program, especially right now, Dr. Dent can talk more about this, and I'm product Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and Dr. Dent is on the school board right now for Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and she's doing a great job there. But as a kid who grew up in Anne Arundel County Public School System and had those programs in the past where, being able to get access to, good quality meals, nutritious meals, or fresh fruits and vegetables, those programs are really in jeopardy right now in our summer meal programs because of the detrimental effects that could happen to our supplemental nutrition, the SNAP program. And education, it's, as of right now, looking at maybe a $4.5 billion cut to Title I schools. And as Mr. Lewis mentioned earlier, and what he really commended on Dr. Dent doing is working with the Van Botham Elementary School, and that's a Title I school. And it's really a school where a lot of our underserved babies and our kids are there, and that would be really a negative effect on our school system right there. And then the list goes on and on. And I mean, clean energy, that's another one, renewables. And so these are really what's happening right now in the halls of Congress, how they can really affect the states. But as a state, we've really tried, as in Marylanders, we've really tried to, during this past session, try to embrace the different types of negative effects that we could, possibly encounter. And fortunately, before the Trump administration took over, we had about a several $billion surplus. We were able to dedicate those dollars to be able to help with our vulnerable populations, whether it be with the food banks or the food distributions, or Dr. Dent knows very well, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future comprehensive educational reform program that we have in our state, injecting billions of dollars into our kids. And these are ways that our state that the Marylanders that the state of Maryland is really trying to do what we can to really make sure that our state is really insulated and protected the best we can from the negative consequences. And, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a partner. We had a partner with the federal government, but now with the several thousand individuals losing their jobs, that's really going to put pressure on our unemployment system in our state. And in the past, we were able to rely on the federal government to help with that, but now, we don't. That's a lot of uncertainty right now, where it puts more pressure on our state to deal with that. And and the last thing I'll leave off and then pass it on to the next speaker is that again, I mentioned earlier how there's so many federal assets in our state, and during the Biden administration, it was decided that the new FBI headquarters was going to be in the state of Maryland. I know there's a little bit of competition between Virginia and Maryland over it, and both Maryland was able to get the bid in Greenbelt, just right outside of D.C., and now that's completely gone. And now these decisions go to Washington, D.C., and that would result in thousands of jobs to the state of Maryland, and all the other types of services and that would have been provided in that area right there. And so these are really just adverse decisions that are being made prior to this big ugly bill coming out and what the Trump administration has done. And by executive order, they're cutting these programs to our after school programs. So these are just some of the things that we as a state of Maryland continue to try to monitor. And it's really a great opportunity to be able to share what's going on in our state. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to ask Dr. Dent, here in the city of Portsmouth, our school board, I follow our school board, and of course, the way the system is set up here, the school board, even though they are elected officials, they are funded totally by the city council, and they have to appeal to the city council for the funds that they need to operate, and then they have to manage it. And a lot of their funds also depends on the state, what they get from the state and the federal government. And one of the things they've been talking about is they're aware of what's going on with the budget, and even if the budget doesn't pass, they know it's been certain things done by the administration to cut certain funds or grants that might be available for the school system. What are some of the things that you all might be doing to prepare, just in case, some of the fundings that you all have been depending on for years is no longer there?
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank
Good
you for the
afternoon.
question.
I'm sorry. Thanks for being here.
That's okay. I'm excited about the conversation. I'm excited especially about the esteemed colleagues that you have from Maryland, and thank you, Mr. Bracey, for inviting me. I know that no one can replace my delegate, Mike Rogers, but I'm happy to stand in the gap for him anytime. Of course, he's my brother in arms as well as you. And so what I will say is that Delegate Chang and Honorable Snowden are probably the people, if I did have to say, that you want to be on a podcast with, because I don't have to be smart. I just have to be present. So thank you all for allowing me to join you here this afternoon. So to answer your question is very easy. So ever since the administration took place, it's not new. It's was a campaign trail. It's about an attack on our education system. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat that it's going to be something that we are all having anxiety and nightmares about, because we cannot believe that in America that is so educated on both sides, regardless of what your political affiliation is, what makes America great is our education system. So, I'm not implying not one time that if it's not broke, don't fix it, but it's really not about fixing our education system. This is actually about fulfilling the ideology of woke America. That's all it is about. This is really not about fixing an education system. This is not about the voucher-based program. This is about an attack on what people have said for so much is the hate for poverty, but America is built on poverty. Poverty is intentional. And so when you talk about the cuts here, we've took a different approach. We've had a really good county council that has really looked at the bill well before now. So 3 years ago, when I first joined the Board of Education, we really took a holistic look at, in order for it to keep our county, to make us number one in the state, what would that take? And how would we be able to do that? And so we did talk to our local legislators. We talked to the city council as well as the county council, and our delegates, to really help them understand that what makes Anne Arundel County unique is our ability to educate. And to educate not only changes the trajectory of our students, but it changes the opportunities for the students going to have. And so we looked at what would this be, what would be the impact. Started in October, so you know, all of us have a different version of how we wanted the outcome to be. But regardless of the outcome, we had to prepare for our children, and we did that. And so right now we're looking at, if this bill were to go through the House, this big ugly bill. I love that Delegate Chang said it is absolutely a big ugly bill. It would have a $99 million impact to Maryland school systems. So what does that mean? So it's about $4.6 million to us. We had to figure out how to make this work, how to do that. Overall, we can't say that the bill won't hurt us, but I will assure you that it is going to be a tremendous impact. And the only thing we can do is work with our legislators and work with our taxpayers. I said this a couple of weeks ago, is that, you know, for the last 3 years, we've done everything we could to try not to cut programs or raise taxes. I think the people of Maryland will be more than happy to stand in the gap and raise their taxes in order for us to ensure that our children have a quality education. And the second part to that is that there's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't talk about the impacts of the budget and what the budget is. This is budget cycle for us all year long. And so what we really want to do is ensure that our education program doesn't look like the top 10% in the classroom. It looks like the 30 children that are there in the 100% of the classroom. And how do we do that? We ensure that there's no child that's sitting in the classroom hungry. We ensure that there's no class that's sitting in the classroom that doesn't have the resources that they need to be successful. And we should ensure that the educators that are in the classroom do not have to worry about how they're going to have a quality of life or have a bill. So if you put all that together, I think that the administration is really not considering the whole child concept that we've talked about for so long. I think they're thinking about just as woke ideology and not realizing that this is going to have long-lasting effects on our children. So I'll continue, as I always have, to advocate not only for a bill that is equitable, but a bill that ensures that all of our children are educated at a quality to where the child that is has a $20,000 income, it gets the same education as the child that has a $200,000 a year income. And so with that, I will say that I don't think that this bill is not going to pass. I believe that it will pass with no problem. I think that because of that, all of the programs that they're talking about will have, although they may not cut them as drastically as they are, they're going to still have an impact. I don't think for 1 minute that I fool myself that this is not going to have an impact, not only on the budget, but also on the education of our children. So yes, I'm worried. I've talked about this 3 times a day with our board about the impact on Maryland. And so I don't know what the impact is going to have across the nation, but I know if $99 million is cut here in Maryland, then I can't imagine what the rest of the states are going to look like.
Wow. And one of the things that I do, and we'll come back to that education piece. One of the things I do is encourage the viewers, if they have any questions or comments to make, to do so. So I'll put this question back up on the screen. Some of it might have been answered already through your commentary, but if anyone wants to answer that or discuss that question from Elder
Take a
Charles
call.
James.
Yeah, let me first thank Elder James for asking the question. What we need to do and what will happen, we need to energize, mobilize, and organize our community. The fact of the matter is, we've got a midterm elections coming up. In 2018, when Trump first got elected to public office, he was stunned during the midterms. They called it the blue wave. More Democrats got elected in 2018 than they had predicted. What they thought was going to be the red wave turned out to be a blue wave coupled with a black wave. There were African Americans, people of color getting elected to office. in numbers unheard of. And so I suspect as we get ready for 2018, we need to begin to educate our community. Elder James asked the question what every citizen wants to know. What can I do? What can we do to make a difference? On July 17th, all over the nation, including Virginia, there will be a rally called Good Trouble Lives On rally in name of John Lewis. And what they're doing is getting people from all over the nation, including Virginia, just to come together, to be able to say clearly, whatever happens in the House of Representatives and the Congress, we will not stand for it. And because we still have a democracy, people have an opportunity to vote. In Virginia, we've got an off election year. People will have an opportunity to vote in Virginia to send a clear message to Washington, D.C. So I would strongly encourage people between now and the midterm election, start registering people to vote, educate people. What most Americans are unaware of is Donald Trump has no mandate. The fact of the matter is he won by a very slim margin. And when you look at the number of people who should have voted and didn't vote, part of not voting, elections have consequences. So I would encourage people to register. I would encourage people to get ready to go to the polls in great numbers and to begin to educate the constituents. Donald Trump told everyone who would listen to his lie that this bill would not affect Medicaid. Well, that's an outright, unadulterated lie. And it's important for us to make sure we share with people what this bill actually does. Gloria Dinn put it so very well. It's a bill that will not only hurt our children, not only hurt education, but somebody I'm particularly interested in is senior citizens. They're the most vulnerable of our society, and this bill is cruel. It is predicted that if this bill passed, 50,000 people will die unnecessarily because of this particular bill, because elderly people will not have access to Medicaid. We can't have that happen, and we need to do everything we can to ensure that what was called the big ugly bill, we turn out in huge numbers and turn out of office anybody who votes for this bill.
Delegate Kane, would you like to add to that?
I would say that there's still time. I mean, obviously, right now it's stalled, and I think that really shows that the members of the Congress and also the U.S. Senate, that they're trying to work things out, and that buys the time for the American people to continue to call, reach out to their representatives, and reach them all different ways, either by phone, email, social, or any ways they can to let their voices be heard and let them know about the drastic effects that will happen on children, on seniors, on just our school systems. And it touches every single demographic, and really what's going on here, it's going to add $3 trillion to our deficit, and it's going to be on the backs of the everyday working person. The only people that are really going to benefit from this are the billionaires. I mean, they're getting tax breaks, but that's going to be on our backs. It's going to be on the backs of police officers, on firefighters, on teachers, on hardworking families out there who are doing what they can to just put food on the table, or get keep the electricity on or the air conditioner on, especially during this heat. So that's what it boils down to.
I like to add on in this part, the follow up on Brother James' question. At this point, realistically, these Republicans have already made their decision, so I don't think there's a lot can be done at this point, especially in this state, because we know where all our elected officials stand in this state. Could that be proven already on the previous vote and the vote yesterday? Both our senators, of course, voted against it. But at this point, because I have the CNN on now as they're covering it, the floor speeches, in case something changes, we can keep track of it. But right now, if you look at what happened with Lisa Murkowski, if you saw what happened to her, she was a key vote. Just like every time it's come down with Murkowski and that other senator from Maine, who should have been out of office 10 years ago. She took money directly in front of our faces in order to change her vote. And then she had, when a reporter tracked her down, and she really couldn't answer the question. If you go back and look at the video, it took her almost 2 minutes before she could open her mouth to say anything, because she didn't expect to get cornered like that. If she was cornered, and she really couldn't even open her mouth to answer the question. Only thing she could mumble out of her mouth to say was, "I'm doing everything I can to benefit the people in my state." I mean, you could say that about anything. But the point is that she was a key vote, and she knew she was a key vote. They pulled her to the side, and then all of them said, "Well, we're going to give you this money for you to go ahead and change your mind." And what make it so embarrassing, it was almost done on the floor itself. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I tell Carl people all the time, these Trump people, they don't hide anything. They put all their evilness right in front of everything. And she changed her vote. If it wasn't for one person who had already said what she's going to do, but realistically, it was 6 of them who said it was not going to vote for it. It was 6 senators who said they weren't going to vote for it. And then all of a sudden, it went from 6 to ended up being just that one person who made the difference. And so right now, I don't think there's a lot can be done, because these people are going to make their decisions. They're already scared of Trump for some reason, that he's going to primary anyone who votes against it on the congressional level. And then you got that other fool, Musk, threatening the same thing. So all we could do at this point is I have to be honest with y'all. I don't think we're going to make it to the midterm elections. I really don't. That's the hope. That's the only way this guy can be stopped, because we can't depend on the courts. That's been proven. We can't rely on the House or the Senate. That's been proven. But I don't believe we're going to make it to. I don't think we're going to make it to the midterm election.
What do you mean we're not going to make it? What do you mean?
Well, I'm being very blunt. If you listen to what a lot of veterans are saying, and a lot of people are still inside, I want to bring up this one point in the budget to answer for you to know what I'm talking about. If anybody know anything about ICE, they know they have always been underfunded. Always. But way before this Trump got in, his people was kissing the butt of all these ICE officials, telling them what they would do for them if Trump comes into office, and bringing them to these private affairs to soften them up for what they wanted to do. And it's all been proven. So with these ICE officials believe all the stuff that Trump told them, and he kept his word. That their budget went from $3 billion to 30. That's I think it was 38 or something like that, $1 billion overnight. Now you just put that in your own mind. $3 billion to, I believe it's 30 something billion dollars overnight. And look who's doing all this stuff on the street. All the ICE agents, the ones who harassing the people and thing. With that money, Trump is going to develop his own. I mean, he's already developed his own private army, and his own private army is that's what the gentleman said on his own jackbooted thugs, just like Hitler did during his time in the 30s when he rose to power. He had these thugs that worked for him. That's all they were. They were just thugs. Half of them was criminals. So Donald Trump is going to use ICE to start some event, because sooner or later people going. Well, I know sooner or later some of my people are already fighting back. I sent you the video. What happened when it came to the Haitians? Okay, sooner or later, a bullet going to fly somewhere. Somebody going to die, and then all hell is going to break loose. But he's already positioned himself to put 30+ billion in the ICE budget so that he can form his own private stormtrooper operation. And if y'all recall, during the COVID, in 2019, they was already used. These were those guys that had on all black outfits that have no identity on them, nothing on their sleeves or nothing. And you found out where they got them from. They got all these people from. Some of them worked as prison guards, as long as they supported Trump. Some of them worked in lower law enforcement, I mean, like an office worker, but they supported Trump. So, and they finding out that if you on some of these ICE agents, they believe that some of these people are actually militia people. Now I can't prove that right now, but if you ever look at those ICE agents, you always see somebody there that has zero identification on them. All he has is guns on them, right? And they got, some of them have funny looking shirts that doesn't apply to the normal workings of that office. And so Donald Trump, in my view, they're going to cite an event. There's going to be some type of riot, and he's going to use that, as I believe, to call for martial law. And martial law means he can suspend elections. And like I said, and I don't want that to happen. But look at the kind of person that we're dealing with. I mean, anybody who can take money out of USA, where you got people starving in Africa, starving in Haiti, starving in many parts of South America. That was the only food supplement they get. That food right now is rotting in the New York City harbors now. They're just sitting there rotting, getting rotten because of Donald Trump's policy. Now you have $11 billion is going to be taken out of programs to feed children, veterans, and old people.
Well, Lewis, let me interject and just say this. You're not the first to talk about the fact that there's this grand scheme to suspend elections and to create martial law. But as Charles James put it, don't play the American people short. You're a veteran. Lawyer is a veteran. You've served. There are a lot of Americans who have served, who understand what fascism is. And I don't think we should assume, whether Trump wants to do it or not, that the American people will roll over if there's an effort to change this democracy. I have a lot more faith in American people. I happen to believe that when you look at history, as I do, some of the darkest times in American history, how American people responded. You know, there have been many, many instances where there was an attempt to use power. And fortunately, both American people and some people have profile of courage. So I wouldn't write that out. There are a number of people who understand what's going on in this country, who are part of a former organization you were part of, the NSA, National Security Intelligence. There are people in the armed services. There are people all over the nation who are watching very carefully. And I think if there's an effort to suspend elections, we'll have a constitutional crisis that we've never seen before. And remember, we've had some pretty tough times here in this country. But the American people have always responded, and I suspect that you'll see it again. There's an effort to suspend elections.
Well, you have more faith than I do, and I've been out there in the streets, as you know, with all the biggest protests. You know, I've been out there with the hands-off people. I've been out there with the 50-50 people, and I've heard people express the same thoughts that you have, but in that same group, the people have the fear of what's going on right now. I mean, just look at all the devilish evil that this moron has gotten away with and continue to get away with. If you listen to the 3 dissenting judges on the Supreme Court, they themselves believe that we're going to be in what you call a constitutional crisis. And that, now, maybe you know more than I do, but if we're going to have a constitutional crisis, I doubt very seriously that crisis is going to come without some heads getting banged against the sidewalk, or there'll be some type of a revolt. I can't see a constitutional crisis just standing in the office of the Senate and the House. Now, maybe you can tell us something about that, but I don't see any other way it's going to happen without coming down to bullets.
Well, let me say this real
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah. I have to say one thing. You know, I agree, Lewis, that we have to be aware and be prepared for whatever might happen, like you recall. But I have to agree with Carl there because we have been our communities have been resilient over a lot of obstacles that have been put in our way. A lot of throwing down on the sidewalks and getting our heads beat in, and we have survived, and we have found a way to overcome. Even when there were laws like Jim Crow laws that were made, that were on the books, that we had to adhere to, we still found a way to survive. And I think being aware of what you're saying, Lewis, of what could happen or the way things could go, I think that we will be resilient enough to survive, especially with the information that we get from shows like this and the information that we spread among our peers. And when you go into education, Dr. Dent, you know, that's a big part of preparing the future generations for what could happen and making them aware through education and being prepared through education, you know, for things that may happen and how to address some of the things that we might face intelligently,
Slim, can I
but
give this?
still be aware
Real
of
quick, Carl.
the violent
James, let me ask a quick
implications that
question.
might come.
James,
Let Dr. Dent get in there and
yeah,
give
Reverend
her
Gillette want to know
view
if you
on
can
what you
call
said.
in.
And after that, I have someone asking a question, and looks like they're saying something against Biden, so there might be something that we might want to get into. But Dr. Dent,
Yeah, hold on 1 second. James,
huh?
Reverend Gillette want to know, do you have the capability to call in?
I don't at this time.
I didn't think so. Okay. He just wanted to call in and make a comment. Okay, thank you.
He can it, he can make a comment by typing his comment in, and we can
Yeah, I
address
told
it
him
that
already.
way.
I just wanted to make sure. All right.
Oh, okay.
Not Miss
We're
Dent.
working on that call in thing.
Okay, Miss Dent.
You know, I really want to just say that, you know, I don't get anxious, right? I tell people all the time is that, you know, people think leadership is a position, but it's not. It is truly in action. And when you have people that are in positions of power, um, there's a intent for people to lead, but that doesn't necessarily happen. Just because you were elected to these positions does not mean that you have a leadership capability or a leadership bone in your body. So what happens with that? What happens is there's 330 million Americans that really, really understands their right to organize, to do community outreach, to call, text, email their senators, but more so, they have an opportunity to vote. It doesn't matter what happens between now and June of next year, and between June and November of next year. What really matters is that by November 4th, 2026, there's going to be an opportunity to elect people to this office. In other words, have a blue wave, and puts a stop to all of this. You know what this really does for me is it make me tell people to stop falling asleep at the wheel. 2018 should have said, you know, we did it and let's keep moving forward. But the momentum stopped. What really should have woke everybody up was waking up in 2016 and he was elected the first time. But it didn't bother anybody. I think that was, people thought that was a one-off. And if you know anything about education, you know, it tells you that in algebra that, you know, or definitely in physics that, you know, things don't just happen for a reason. For every action, there's a reaction, right? And so the reaction to not voting is, this is the reaction. And so when people say that I'm not going to vote for anyone, Biden or Trump, well, you're going to get a president regardless of what you do. And so now we've gotten a president, not one that we may have, anybody on this call may have elected, but that's what we have. And so I think that as an American person, for me, for myself, I will participate in public demonstrations. I'll participate in rallies. I will hold my elected officials accountable. I don't appreciate the fact that they have 535 of the most powerful people in the United States of America. And they are making decisions with people and lives that we hold near and dear to our heart, our children, our seniors, people that are vulnerable. And they take that with a grain of salt just to make a deal to put more money in corporate America's pocket. It doesn't make sense to me. But that's my outreach. That's my personality. But here's what we tell our children every day. At the age of 18, it doesn't matter where you are grown. You have to make the decisions that are going to impact you for the rest of your life. I will say that to every child that listens to the sound of my voice. Use your social media, raise your awareness, go out to community outreaches. Our children has the biggest impact and the ability to change anything that they want to do. But they have to stop sitting on their laurels and not do the same thing that we did, not only in 2018, but in 2024. We have to wake up.
Yes, indeed. And before we go further, you know, we've been getting this, a lot of times when an issue comes up, the blame goes to Biden and what happened during his administration. So we have a question here, and I'm not sure, but I want this person to later on tell me if he voted for Trump. But anyway, here's the question or the statement, uh, pretty much. Let me do it again. Very close, and anybody can jump in. And
Well, I think, let me just, what does he mean? $7.1 trillion disappeared during the during the Biden administration. Sound like to me that's one of those trolls, one of those talking points. Nobody in the world even know what he's talking about. Disappeared. What? What is he referring to? But one of the things I like to be able to say, going back to a point that Lewis had made, and I just want to share this. Because again, I think history is important here. And I want to make sure people understand certain things. There was a time, it's called the Dred Scott decision. The Dred Scott decision was handed down by the Supreme Court. What the Dred Scott decision said was that black people had no rights that white people were bound to respect. And during that particular generation of leaders, there was a man named Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass had to tell abolitionists and supporters what this particular ruling meant. And he went on to say that this particular ruling would set black people back for generations yet unborn. It was a terrible, terrible ruling. And he was self-taught and self-educated. But Gloria, there was a black woman. Her name was Sojourner Truth. She was born Isabella. She could not read nor write. She was illiterate. And she came to the same meeting that Frederick Douglass was at, where Frederick Douglass was talking about how the Supreme Court had handed down this decision as going to set people back for generations. And she asked the question, "What's wrong, Frederick?" And Frederick Douglass responded, "Didn't you just hear me say that the Supreme Court has handed down this decision and it will set black people back for generations?" And Sojourner Truth responded, "But Frederick, I didn't know you believed in any Supreme Court. I thought you believed in a supreme being. Our God didn't bring us this far to leave us. And before people give up the faith, I've seen and lived through and can give testament to the power of people and prayer. And I would not write off this country and write off what we are capable of doing. As was pointed out by Slim, we've overcome a great deal, too much. And I happen to have great faith in a God that I believe, even during these trying times. I've seen people like Trump before. I've seen Ronald Reagan. I've seen others who come and gone. But I know who's in charge. And I strongly believe that if we do all the things that Gloria talked about, encouraging our young people to go out and register and to vote, using social media effectively, and not being pessimistic, but saying to people that we fought too long and too hard for this thing we call the democracy, to allow any one person, or in Lewis's words, thugs, try to take over the nation. I'm not going to give up my belief in the fact that the American people, and I've seen it over and over again, have responded in the worst and the darkest times. So I'm with Sojourner Truth. I'm believing in the supreme being,
Well,
not a
well,
Yeah,
well, well, Carl,
and I
you
believe we
know,
should be prepared and as Lewis says. But Lewis, before you make your comment, I want to delegate Chain to get in and give his comments on the subject we've been talking about the last few minutes,
I would say that,
and then you, Lewis.
yeah, with regards to the question about the $7.1 trillion, that's definitely something that's out there that doesn't have any validity to it. With regards to whether it be state or federal budgets, there's different independent agencies that do oversight. So there's accountability measures out there that really account for every dollar that's spent. Just like everyone has stated, I mean, the thing is really get engaged, and we have a new generation that's coming up. A lot of young people, they're really excited about being part of democracy and this show that we're on part of, this podcast. And every little bit counts, and I would say that just be consistent and being part of being active in our democracy, and that's what's going to result in the change. And the American people, they see what's going on. And again, this is not a bill that easily slid through the halls of Congress as was initially projected. I mean, it's now they've been probably talking about extending the timeline as far as the July 4th date. So, there has been a lot of resistance, and I believe that's because of the American people being involved and engaged.
Okay, Lewis, you had
yes.
comment?
Well, what I wanted to say was to follow up on the question that Brother James sent in, and the tail end of what Carl is saying, what a whole bunch of other people, as I call the church people, keep saying. And I really like y'all. I mean, come on, y'all know my views on religion, all right, and
Yes, we
how
do.
little I think about what they have done in this time of Trump. Uh, and I believe there is a God, but I also believe that God gave us all the tools to do all the things that we're supposed to do. Personally, I think God are tired of us because He said, "Y'all keep asking for stuff. Y'all, I told you what to do. I gave you the tools to do it. We're not doing and not using the tools that God gave us. And so I'm saying all of that. Say, it gets to me when people keep saying that God's in charge. No, God's not in charge. The devil's in charge. If God was in charge, the devil wouldn't be winning as much as he winning. I know people don't like to hear that, and I don't want nobody to agree with me. But facts are facts. Donald Trump has been winning, and he is the devil, or at least a devil's servant. So I would like somebody would have to convince me, and there's not a preacher on this planet that can do it, is to tell me why it is that in this day and time, as I say this morning, 11 million people is going to lose their health care under this man. 11 million people. I can't even count the number of students in these in schools and in recreation programs after school that will lose benefits now. I can't count the number of senior citizens who's going to suffer now. And I already mentioned the people who are suffering all over the world because of one person that people are afraid of for some reason that I would never understand. So when people throw God into the picture, you have to do a lot of explaining to me to tell me where he's at and where his people at. Because where are his people? Where are those damn mega ministers who haven't said a word? They haven't said a word about this man. Now, these are the mega ministers. I made a mission this weekend and say, how many people going to, I asked some people to listen to the service, over 20 people. I said, tell me if your pastor said anything about the budget that's coming up. Not one of them did. Not one sermon was done on it. Wasn't even mentioned. So I know y'all church people. I know y'all got to say y'all believe in this stuff like that, but I deal in reality and I deal in facts. And I don't see any reality that somebody gonna come out of the sky and gonna save us. I don't see any reality and when you have all the people in this country who go to church every damn Sunday and we're not getting none of it. Where is that? Where are those people at? Where are those people? And like I said, either one of you tell me what mega minister has spoke out against Donald Trump. Tell me one. Nobody has an answer for that. Okay.
I can say this. I can say this, Lewis. We've had down here in the city in Hampton Roads, we've had maybe about 3 town hall meetings, and one of them, Senator Warner attended, and of course, State Senator Lucas and Don Scott, Speaker of the House, and the other delegates have had them all over. And each one of those events have been held in church. And to me, that is the minister speaking out, opening up their churches. And each one of these churches will pack to capacity as far as the people coming to the town hall for information and getting away and walking away with information of what they can do or what they can do. Now, it's up to them after they walk away. But I'm just saying, maybe that's the pastors speaking up, holding those events in their churches. That's just my thought on that.
I will tell you that, Lewis, that Jamal Bryant, one of my, out of Baltimore, but down in my hometown, Atlanta, has been a very strong advocate that talks about not only Trump, but just all of the impacts of everything that he's done to not only just the impact on people, but an impact on religion and everything else. So I do think that there are a lot of ministers out there that don't believe. But to your point, I understand when you say serving God, it gets you through it emotionally, but it may not get you through it when it comes to this Senate and this House, right? When it comes to our Congress. What's going to get us through it is active voice and active voting. I can't stress it enough. It doesn't matter what happens between now and November 4th, 2026. There's not a whole lot we can do other than do the lobbying and protesting and community outreach. But what we can do is vote. And that is what the problem is. People take voting for granted. They don't realize the impact of what their vote really means. And the only thing that you have is your voice. And even for the people of the church, they pray, they use their voice. Okay. And so what you can do is vote. And so I think that the argument for me is that why not vote? Why not make a decision? Even if you make no decision, don't like anyone, you have to make a decision. And so get informed about being able to do that. And so I say to everybody on the call this afternoon is that I'm not going to lose faith in the system. I'm not talking about in my biblical sense. I'm saying in the system called the Constitution. Our Constitution has been written for people like this. Yes, we do have the Congress that are not doing the things they're supposed to do, but it doesn't mean that we're going to continue or allow them to continue to do the things they're going to do. I say that I'm going to do everything I can to change the demographics of the Republican in Congress and make sure that come November of next year, we're not looking the same way.
And I must say too, Lewis, what you bring up should be a part of the conversation. It kind of helps the conversation because there's probably a lot of people that feel the way you feel, and they might rightfully so feel that way and have a reason to feel that way. So that's the reason for this type of discussion to have. I don't want to have a panel up here where everybody agrees because we'll see the numbers drop, But we want people to share their own perspectives, their own opinions of how things go, and that's how you get to a point of a solution, by talking about the different thoughts that people may have about situations, and then sort of putting it all together, and hopefully we can come out of this with some solutions that will help the viewers as well as us that are part of this conversation.
Well, James, Brother Charles James sent in another message. He's mad at me because you put it in big caps.
Well, you kind of knew that. You knew something was coming, right?
I kind of expected that.
You can't just say things like that.
But I know he's listening, so I wanted him to know. I see you put it in big caps. I said, don't get that mad at me. But look, I'm looking at the count. I mean, Trump had massive victories and against evil. and I'm sorry, I'm just one of those people. Like, I've mentioned before, and then
So
we
did
can
the
get back
Roman
on it.
Empire. They had massive
Yeah,
victories. But what
I
happened
mentioned
to
this
them?
before. When certain things in church never made sense to me when I was coming up, and my mother always slapped me on the back of the head whenever I questioned anything to deal with God, Jesus, or anything. But even as a child, some things just never made sense to me. But this now, we're living in this point now where it really is putting my faith and whatever faith I had left into the question, because I just cannot see I can't even wrap my head around the fact that you have this idiot in office doing the things that he's doing, and this is just this week. We can go back to this $400 million jet. We can go back to the $2 billion his son-in-law brought back from Saudi Arabia. We can go back to all his illegal golf courses that he's using, and then the fact that we spend more tax money with this fool playing golf every weekend than you have that funding entire school districts just for what this fool does on a week. Do you know every time a president moves, it takes anywhere from $10 to $20 million? Every time he moves. And then this a-hole spent 45. It was really more than that because they didn't tell y'all how much the local authorities had to spend on it. $45 million on his BS parade. And y'all know I was there, and you saw what the stands was like. Now, I'm just putting out those figures right there. It's what he has gotten away with in the last couple of weeks alone. Not to go by the fact that all the stuff he did in this last administration, and you telling me that all these religious people in this country, all these churches, all these mega ministers, all these people who claim that they believe in Jesus Christ in this country, and we're letting this guy decimate our country as we see it before our very eyes. I'm sorry, my faith is not. I don't have that kind of faith. I have the faith that what we need to do is what I say before. When we had those 100,000 people again who come to Washington D.C., we should take those 100,000 people, go to the White House and storm it, and I'll be in front of the line if we can get those 100,000 people to do it and storm the White House and take it over. That's what I believe that's going to happen and going to be needed to happen. Like I said, we are not going to get out of this station. We are not going to get out of this Trump era bloodless. We're not. And I wish, and Carl Snowden know what I tried to do in this state. I tried to get 12 pastors to speak with one voice about the upcoming trauma that we were going to receive, and we never could get 12. Am I lying, Carl?
No, you're not. But
we set up the meeting. We couldn't even get 12. Then I went to D.C. to try to do the same thing. Couldn't even get 12 who would even agree to do it. And most of the excuses was the same excuses that they was honest. At least they was honest enough to say it. Oh, I don't want them looking at my taxes. And what does that tell you? So I'm sorry, I can't be in y'all camp on this one.
You don't have to be in the camp, but let me just say this for the viewers. Again, your sister Catherine Gracie made a good point about Martin Luther King Jr. I just want to, for those who want to take the time, take the moment, if you will. There's a great sermon that Dr. King gave, and it's called "But If." Just Google Martin Luther King Jr. "But If," and it deals with faith and the sort of thing. And I'm not trying to convert anybody, but it may be well worth you taking the time to listen to that sermon. And again, I just want to remind people, my mother lived to be 104 years old. And Slim, she said something that I think is worth repeating. Because again, people just don't have a sense of history. During 1929, the Great Depression, do people realize that in 1929 there was no social programs at all? There was no Social Security. There were no welfare programs that existed in 1929. And what my mother told me is something I want to repeat to this audience, because I think we need it. I asked my mother prior to her passing, Mama, tell me, how did Black people survive in 1929. Racism was prevalent. There was the law of the land. You talk about Jim Crow. That was the reality. Black people didn't have anybody elected in public office for the most part in 1929. How did black people survive, I asked. And I will never forget her answer. And it's one worth repeating. She said, we didn't turn on each other, we turned toward one another. And again, we as a community, Americans of goodwill, have to join hands. Every time we join hands, we make America better. And again, I have the faith that, again, people will do the right thing. Lewis will be reminded of something. I wrote a book before Donald Trump got elected to public office. And in that book, I predicted that Donald Trump would not get reelected. Lewis didn't believe it at the time, but the book came out before the election, and Donald Trump lost the election. And I'll just simply say this. Do not write off the American people. Do not assume that because people are not in the street in huge numbers, that the American people are not awake. In fact, Lewis, you will recall, because you were at this, you were stunned. There was a rally called the No Kings Rally. Millions of people all over this country,
I was
from
there.
the West Coast to the East Coast, showed up in great numbers. Again, I'm going to emphasize on July 17th, and Delegate Chan, I'd like to invite you to come down to this. On July 17th in Annapolis, at the Lawyers Mall, we're going to again have a demonstration in the memory of John Lewis. And we're going to remind people that we can make a difference. If you're anywhere in America on July 17th, if you happen to be in Annapolis, Maryland, join us at the State House. If you're in Virginia, there's going to be a demonstration in Virginia on the John Lewis, July 17th. So the thing that Gloria Dent said, and I hope people don't miss this, Gloria Dent said, look, do your part. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. If your something is getting people registered to vote, go out and register people to vote. If your something is to show up at the march to protest, show up at the march to protest. But the one thing that will not solve this problem is pessimism. If you don't think there's anything that people can do that will change anything, nothing will change. The fact of the matter is that we are people who prove that once we get involved, we can change things. We've done it before. I'm in the state of Maryland where we have the only black governor in the state of Maryland. That didn't happen by accident. We've done tremendous progress. And again, it's because people got involved. So I would encourage people to get involved. I would encourage the churches to get more involved, because Lewis' criticism of some members of the church, I think, is valid, but not all churches. There are churches that are doing some good
90% of them ain't worth a damn.
Well, I wish Reverend Gillette was on the program to speak to that, but I'll leave that alone, and we'll
Yeah, he's
at another
listening.
time have that discussion. Yeah, I wish he was there to talk
Yeah,
about this. Yeah.
I'm asking if he probably can log in. He should have the link to log in, because we really need. And Lewis, you see our classmate Ray Smith made a
Yeah.
comment there.
Yeah, but he, in his comment, he's saying what I just said. They worrying about their taxes, worrying about them looking at their books. And you know yourself, I got relatives who are ministers and run churches. They said, if you're not doing anything illegal, you don't have to worry about them looking at your books. So what he's saying is exactly the lame excuses that that they keep giving me. Oh no, Brother Bracy, I believe in what you're doing, and I believe your passion, Brother Bracy. But we worried about the man coming here and taxing us and taking away our taxes and status and all this kind of stuff, you know. And I'm sorry again, Jesus spoke to his people outside free. You don't have to have a church, you know, if you believe. I mean, they you know, you don't have to be inside of a building. I was told when I was when I was coming up that God is wherever you want him to be. So if you worried about Trump coming in there taking your church away from you, then get and preach from your car. Get a microphone and preach from your car. Have the people follow you if they follow you that much. Don't be worried about somebody taking some damn tax credit from you. I can't get with that. I'm sorry.
I just sent to Reverend Tillett the link because he said he didn't have the link.
Okay. Yeah, because
So
I sent, maybe I had the wrong email. So thanks for doing
yeah,
that.
sent
So
it to
he should
him,
be
and
coming on soon. Okay.
hopefully he'll be able to join the discussion.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave the discussion because I've got something I got to do at 8:30. But let me
Okay.
just this before leaving, if I might. Um, Delegate Chan, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being involved. Thank you for making a difference. And for those who are listening and watching the program tonight, one of the things I would hope that you will recall, that people will do rather, is whatever you decide you can do, make a contribution, whatever that contribution is. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And anybody that knows anything about the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the women's movement, know that all of the things, all the changes that came in this country were not easy. Didn't come by accident, didn't come by coincidence. It became because people came together and worked to make a difference. Don't give up. Don't back up, speak out, and make a difference. We can and will be able to change the direction of this nation. I'm one who is optimistic. I believe that the American people will not stand for fascism. And I think the country's trying to move in that direction. And I'm convinced there are many, many people in this country who will not stand idly by and watch this country lose its democracy. So, Slim, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this discussion. I wish I could stay for the rest of it. Lewis, please bring me up to date with what I missed. And before I go, I want to thank Virginia. And I think, Mark, you will join me in this. It was Virginia, Portsmouth, that sent Lewis Bracy to Maryland. And he Maryland, and one of the things I want y'all to know, and I think Mark will attest to this, Lewis Bracy has contacted every single member of elected official in the state of Maryland. In Anne Arundel County, he has talked to every elected official. He has asked them to take and be involved. And he has been a model of what all citizens should do to be involved, to make a difference. So, Lewis, while we may disagree on your analysis of the churches, I certainly support your passion to make America better and not bitter. I support the fact that you, individually, for people don't know this, but you've made a huge difference. And what I love about Lewis Bracy, and I tell anybody who want to hear this, what I love about Lewis Bracy, he just doesn't talk, he acts, he gets involved. And Slimmy puts his money where his mouth is. He'll go out and support people. He'll knock on doors. He'll do all the things that we want citizens to do. And he's a former veteran. He's somebody that's been in the military. He understands the consequences of war. So thank you, Lewis, for your leadership, and thank you for your service. And again, Slim, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this great discussion.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl. I
Thanks,
really
Carl.
appreciate
Appreciate what
you.
you said.
I really appreciate you and look forward to next time you can come and join our panel and further discuss the issues of today.
Thank you,
And I
Mike.
will say, Lewis is a product of, he said he's from Portsmouth, Virginia. He's a product of his environment. What you see in him now is what he was when he was in high school,
Wow.
running for running for the class for the student council president and in our neighborhood. So,
Glad you
what you
really
learn at a young age really carries on into your adulthood. So be aware of what you're doing, young people, when you're, you know, when you're growing up and in your adolescent days. So we certainly appreciate that. Thanks again. And let me bring on the pastor here. Okay, welcome.
Good evening. How y'all doing?
We're doing good. Hope you can hear us okay. We certainly can hear you. So
Again.
you've been listening. So if you have anything you'd like to contribute at this time, please do so, sir.
I just heard Carl, my big brother, say that he has some hope for our country and for the American people, that ultimately they will do the right thing. I hope he's right, and I hope they hurry up, because as each day goes on, things get more challenged, and the worse things get, the more digging we're going to have to do to get out of the hole. And when you look at this misnamed bill, they call it a big beautiful bill, and I don't know why they would call it that. If anything, it's a big bogus bill, because it's a hot mess in terms of the damage that it is going to bring about for a fair number of the American people. I'm just pulling up here the document that I had shared earlier. I put it on. I try and share things on Facebook. Some people get their news from Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, so try to put these things out here. And so I just have this overview. What the big bogus bill does: it cuts $800 billion from Medicaid. For our community, that affects 1 in 3 Black Americans who rely on it. It will result in the closing of hundreds of rural hospitals around the country that largely serve less financially advantaged white folks, some Black folks too, but a larger majority of white folks, many of whom supported the administration that's doing this to them. It kicks over 11 million people off of health care by the year 2034. You'll remember in the last 2 Democratic administrations, the plan was to get people on health care. And now these folks are trying to kick people off of health care. Why you would want to do that, I don't know. It adds red tape to get SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. It makes the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent. And then it creates so-called Trump accounts and child credits, but they are limited and temporary and they expire. So let's look at that. Tax cuts for billionaires are being made permanent. And child credits are temporary. Why would you do that? Why people who have children and need credits in the year 2026, 27, 28, they're going to continue to need them. Why would they go away? I don't know why they made them temporary anyway. If we remember during COVID, when they essentially for a short time were able to elevate 50% of children in the United States out of poverty with more resources and tax credits and health care and everything else, because all of a sudden they were stunned. Wait a minute, there's food insecurity since when? There's healthcare insecurity since when? Housing insecurity since when? We're glad. Who woke you up? But now that you're up, do it not just now, but make it permanent. But they made it temporary, it expired, and then they won't do it. And so, and all of this, by the end of the day, will add $3 or $4 trillion to our national debt, which is already over $30 trillion. All in the interest, at the end of the day, in giving tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires. That is unconscionable. A budget is a moral document, and this document is showing itself to be woefully morally deficient.
Absolutely.
Hey, any other comments on that? I want to bring this up too, and we can get back to anything else. But why this is on my mind, Lewis, because today, every month I meet with some fellas out of the neighborhood, and each one of them are Vietnam vets, and I'm the only one that at the table with them for lunch that is not a veteran. 3 of them are Vietnam vets. One of them was in the jungle, and 2 of them were around Vietnam, and the other one was in Korea. And as I sit there, you know how long ago it was, Vietnam War, and they're back now over 50 years, and they're still having issues of getting things from the Veterans Administration that they deserve, after all these years. And I don't know how this bill will affect veterans, but maybe you all can enlighten me on how, because I can't imagine my good friends that fought for us. One of them was wounded in the jungle, and he told a story about he was wounded, and while he was healing, before he completely healed, his superiors sent him back in the jungle because that's how much they needed the bodies out there, and some of them end up coming back. The bodies came back, lifeless. But for them to have to be struggling now to get what's due to them, and then on top of that, possibly facing, more obstacles or roadblocks or have to jump over hoops to get what's due to them. Even after one said that he had the doctor's approval and was turned down for he was diagnosed with sleep apnea, which can be a serious thing if you don't have that machine. That machine is quite expensive. And so I just wanted to bring that up, as we talk about everything, and all this is all inclusive of how it's going to affect. One thing affects another. Since we have 3 veterans on there, and Dr. Dent, I hope you're still listening, and you can contribute as well since you are a vet. What are we looking at with this bill coming up as far as that might affect veterans today, on top of the backlog that they're dealing with now, 50 years after they've served honorably in the Vietnam War.
Well, we can let Mark talk about how the money affect veterans in this state, and I know the Reverend has something to say, and then I can follow up after let the two of them hit it with the information.
Sure. Thanks very much, Lewis. Yeah, already with regards before this bill even has made its way through Congress, again, as I mentioned earlier, that decisions that were made by the Trump administration ever since the beginning of his term is really negatively affected, from the FBI headquarters not coming to Maryland to various other cuts to education and healthcare and other really safety net programs. From the initial analysis that we're seeing is that with regards to veterans, that the access to medical coverage or the wait times for them to be able to get different types of really essential services for their healthcare, that would be delayed. So there would be a significant delay in regards to access to healthcare for veterans, or even worse.
And in addition to access to healthcare, another thing that has taken a hit as they are desperately seeking dollars to cut from the budget so that they can add that into tax cuts for the wealthy, is that they have made it harder for veterans to see counselors. So when you have veterans getting who are going to counselors, that is pertinent to suicide prevention, as they are dealing with, and we know these things that you come back from the jungle, but you bring some of that stuff with you. By way of example, there's a gentleman that I know who is now in his 70s. They sent him over there when he was a kid, 17, 18, 19 years old. And he said every morning after 2 a.m., like 2, 3 a.m., mortar fire would come into the base. Now, he's in his 70s, so he made it. He didn't get killed, he didn't get injured. But every morning at 2 or 3 o'clock, he wakes up because he still has PTSD from being a teenage kid in the jungle. These people who all gave some gave all. We say I'm a retired military chaplain. We talk about people giving the last full measure of devotion. And so some gave all, they gave everything, they gave their lives. And then others came back impaired and damaged in some way. And it's supposed to be a contract that when we raise our hand and say that I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's like I'm in a fraternity. That's like when you get initiated into a frat or you become a Mason or something. That's lifelong. That doesn't go away. So even if you only serve 2, 3, 4 years and you're not a career military person, whatever you came back with, we owe you for the rest of your life if need be. And we shouldn't be dancing around and trying to, because you know what happened, I'm sure you all know, with Agent Orange, that they're dropping that to defoliate the jungles the areas where the Viet Cong were. And of course, it had carcinogens in it, and our people are coming back getting sick. And they had to go from over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house to try and prove that what they were sick with, that what a lot of them were sick with, there was a pattern they got over there. Why do you make them do that? You just said, Slim, about a guy who was injured and was still healing, and they sent him back out there. If you're gonna do that to me, don't ask me nothing. When I get back, if I have PTSD, if I have cancer from chemicals you drop, whatever it is, I just need you to say, thank you for your service, corporal, sergeant, captain, general, whatever you need, we will do. Period. Stop. Full stop. That's all we need. But they're not doing that. So this budget is reducing some of those things. And while I've got the screen, one thing that I'm also very active with the Poor People's Campaign in Maryland, that's led nationally by Bishop William J. Barber II. Mm-hmm. And of course, as I said, a budget is a moral document. But just this note on poverty. Poverty is a choice. There's a lie about scarcity in this country. We got money for everything we want to have money for, except for taking care of our people. 800 people a day in the United States die as a result of poverty, whether that's malnutrition, don't have access to food, safe housing, medical care, whatever. 800 a day. That's almost 300,000 people a year dying in the richest nation in the history of the world because of poverty. That's horrific and completely unacceptable. And if this big bogus bill passes and becomes law, it is estimated that an additional 51,000 more people will die. In the same way that as they have eviscerated USAID, and Presidents Bush and Obama both said, I don't know why you're doing that. We've saved tens of millions of lives with USAID, but trying to take money from us so that you can give tax cuts to billionaires, and people are going to start dying again. That means 850,000 people plus a year in this country will die because of poverty. There are 195 countries in the world, gentlemen. Over 175 of them offer free government health care to their citizens. The United States is the only developed Western nation that does not do it. And so for the people that want to start screaming out words they might not be able to spell or define, communist, socialist, Marxist, and so we shouldn't do that. Most of these countries are not communist or socialist or Marxist, but they do believe in taking care of their people. And so they do.
Well, again, Reverend, you lead it to what we were talking about before you came in. And I have to say this, it's blasphemous. It's blasphemous for what is happening in this budget. But I want to get back also to see how blasphemous it is with veterans, since Slim brought that question up. The burn pit thing, when they were burning all this stuff and doing basically all the wars, even in Iraq and Afghanistan, they had burn pits. And people don't know what goes into that. Those burn pits, anything can go into those. Old computers, munitions, anything. And plastic, there's a lot of toxic chemicals in the PCs that we have right in front of us right now. Mm-hmm. Now, if you in the military and you stationed on one of those bases where they have the burn pit stuff going on, you can see it in the air and everything. It's not like it's from you. It's right there around you, and it's in the air. Now, anything in the air, you can breathe it in. Now, I'm saying that to say this, is that this animal, Donald Trump, is taking away money from veterans, and specifically to address that issue of burn pits, much less the people with PTSD. As you mentioned, one of the things I know, if you talk to any veteran who's been in combat, they never forget the bombs that's going off. Even if they're some not affected by it, they all know someone who was affected by it. They never, when you hear bombs blowing up constantly, there's no way in hell that can affect your mind after a period of time. Some people get through it, some people don't. Now, this is the blasphemous part of it. You have a draft dodging, bone spur, a golfing every week president now telling us veterans that we don't need all this stuff. Some veterans have 10%, 20%, and 40% disability. In his mind, if you don't need 100%, you don't need anything. And he said that. He said that. And so this blasphemous, bone spur, golfing every weekend, fat president is going to tell a veteran what they need and what they don't need. That's blasphemous. And then on top of that, then I'm going to end with this. There are 3 veterans now in his concentration camps that served this country. 2 of them are Americans. And the other one was one of Hispanic countries came in, he served. There are 3 United States veterans who served this country in Trump's concentration camps. 2 of them is 100% American. 2 of them have PTSD, and their families have not been in contact with them. You never heard in the news. The other person, like I said, he's Hispanic, but still, no one who served this country in uniform, no one who served this country in uniform honorably should be mistreated by a ungodly, unholy, uncaring individual like Donald Trump. It's blasphemous. And this is why I'm so hard on the church. I'm so hard on the so-called religious people, because this is pure evil. We are looking at pure evil right now. Anyone who's going to brag about putting human beings next to alligator pits in Florida, as you see, and in Louisiana, and laugh about it. Y'all, I sent this thing to some of you yesterday. They laughed about it. That is inhumane. That's inhuman. That's ungodly. And the reason why I'm so hard on the church is because you tell me who's out there other than Reverend Barber, one person, and maybe 2 or 3 others. Where are they at? Everybody should be at the White House right now telling this man, basically should be telling him to go straight to hell, and you know, and don't stop at the stop sign on the way down there, because it's evil, it's blasphemous, it's unholy, it's ungodly. And then and we already talked about the USAID, how all these kids are starving all over the world. I mean, come on, this man must
Lewis,
go.
I need to stop you there. So Reverend Barber is far from the only minister who is doing this. All of us who are active with the Poor People's Campaign, many of us are clergy, and we are going to state capitals, because I've gone to Annapolis there for some PPC events. We go to the Supreme Court, we go to the House of Representatives and Senate, etc. We're out there. So they might not be the names that you know, because
it should be more, Reverend. It should be more.
But there are hundreds, if not thousands, who are. You just don't know them. I can't name a lot of them off the top of my head. I could name some, but they're colleagues. They're out there. But it's just you're thinking about maybe the people with the mega churches, and you don't see them there. And that might be the case, but there are a whole lot more smaller churches and mega churches, and a lot of those pastors are with this.
Okay. Let me step in before we go there. Let's finish the veteran issue. I believe that's why Dr. Dent turned on her camera, so she could address that, and then we can go back to the church, if you will, Reverend Pastor.
I was going to say, so I work with a lot of veterans. Some of them I even see in the chat box that I've worked with. You don't ever forget your training as a veteran, so you absolutely never going to forget if you ever went to combat as a veteran. But I will tell you that the other part of that is about whether the benefits are out there. It's whether you apply for your benefits. I am probably one person that can say with authority and experience that there are Vietnam veterans still today that has never filed for their benefits. and the PAC Act has been in place since 2022, and they have not filed for their benefits. It doesn't matter whether whether Trump stops their benefits, takes their benefits, they haven't applied for them. I say that to say that until they're stopped, apply for them so that you can get them, so that you will have them. The one thing it does take a congressional change for is for them to stop your benefits. That's not a stroke of his executive order. And that's part of why I tell veterans that don't live by this fear of what, it doesn't matter what you say, it's what you do, right? As I told you earlier, it's about your actions. And so I don't believe for 1 minute that Congress is going to hurt veterans, because guess what? They're hurting themselves. So they're not going to stop their benefits. What they will try to do is eliminate the benefits that are going to veterans medically, which is where we really need to tune in at. So if you're going to get your benefits, apply for them and go ahead on and let the chips fall where they may. But where the impact is what I'm concerned about is medical benefits for veterans. I have veterans right now that are having a hard time qualifying for medical benefits because of the wage requirement, right? And because of the limitations that they have. If the big beautiful bill passes, or the big ugly bill passes, it's going to put them in increase more hardship, and this hardship is not going to be anything that any veteran can withstand. Right now, if you are a homeless veteran with no benefits, never have filed a VA claim, you can get your benefits through VA because you're probably on SNAP, TANF, or one of these other social services. That if this bill goes into place, that will go away. So therefore, we got to find another way for those veterans to qualify. You just don't qualify for medical coverage just because you are a veteran. You have to have a service-connected disability. And so my point to this is why I really turned my camera on, is to say, while we're listening to this, if there's veterans out there, file for your benefits. You only have to call the 1-800-827, I'm going to say that again, 1-800-827-1000 number, pick up the phone and call. The person on the other end of that phone will file a claim for you while you're on the phone. The idea of you can't find anyone, you don't have to worry about that no more. You can self-file. So there's so many ways for you to get it. But let's not wait until things are put in place to make it harder for our veterans to get the benefits that they're entitled to.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor, for sharing that. And I want to get back to the religion right quick, because I want to bring up the evangelicals, which the right uses, as far as their religious, as they try to prove that what they're doing is in God's eyes, because the evangelicals interpret the Bible in a way that benefits them. And as you talk, Lewis, about some of the things that our churches are not doing, I'm sure a lot of the churches you're talking about are the African American churches. Am I correct?
Both.
The ones you are more familiar with. So how do we, as a whole, deal with the right using the evangelicals and spreading the word in a way where, so many of those voters believe that that's the word of God, and that's the way they vote that way, which really is in contrast to the way the word really reads.
Well, while Dr. Dent was talking, I went on here to Google so I can have the facts, and I want people to understand something. I absolutely do know that there are many ministers who are doing the right thing. You're looking at one of them right there. That's why I talked to him, because he's one of the ones who's doing what he's supposed to do. And I have met, many ministers in our demonstrations that I've been to. And like I said, I've been over 42 demonstrations in DC. And I do know that there's ministers that's out there doing the right thing. But my number speaks for itself. There's over 225 million people who call themselves Christians in America. Now, that's just the Christians. I didn't look for the Buddhists and all them other people, just the Christians alone. Now, 225 million. You had allegedly 77 million voted for Trump, 76 million voted for Harris allegedly, but there's 80 million who didn't vote at all. 80 million that didn't vote at all. Now, I was a horrible student in math, but that still doesn't come up to 225 million people. Now, that was just the people who identify themselves as Christians. Now, you see, when you put all that together, and in any city that you can go to, you go to Philadelphia, and Reverend, you've been to Philadelphia, you have a church on every corner in Philadelphia. I would gather, I
just
would
like Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah, Philadelphia is the only places that they have more churches
like
than they have liquor
Portsmouth.
stores. You know, but this is why I again say I'm not attacking any individual pastor who is doing the right thing, not one. But I'm gonna tell you this, I spoke to this. Now it's 118 pastors who I personally talked to face to face. 118. That's where I'm at now. I'm just one person now. 118. You know what? 112 of them told me to do. This is why I keep coming back to Bishop Barber. They say, go see Bishop Barber. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling the truth. You know I'm telling the truth, Reverend. They say, well, no, we don't do that, but go see Bishop Barber. Now, that was 112. The other 6 is just like Reverend Toulette right there sitting in that chair now, who's doing the right thing. But 112 sent me to Reverend Barber rather than to do something themselves. So that's what I'm saying, is that you can't tell me, I can't wrap my head around allegedly, and we don't need 225 million. I just want 6% of them. You know why I want 6%? Because the evangelicals, only 6% of the evangelicals are the ones who run in the whole show. They do the stuff that they want. 6% got the abortion bill passed. 6% is taking stuff from Planned Parenthood. 6% of the total evangelical do all the work that we're seeing now that Donald Trump piggyback on to roll his fat butt into the White House. So 6%. So now you're telling me that what would Jesus do, people? Passing the plate every Sunday, people. You try to tell me why shouldn't 225 million people who claims to believe in Jesus Christ and the things that Jesus Christ stands for. Now here it is, this fat turd is taking the money from every single thing that Jesus would want you to have. Every single thing, to give it to the rich people who don't need it. They don't even need it. And he's going to make that permanent. Why are you making permanent tax cuts for the wealthy? Why? You don't need it. You saw what Bezos did with his wedding, brought half the world to his damn wedding with his money. Come on now.
I didn't see any.
You cannot tell me that we should that godly people in this country should not be standing up and making a stronger statement against this evil, devilish, unholy, ungodly, unclean person. I can't take it.
Clearly.
I got Trump derangement syndrome.
Well, let me say this, and Dr. Dent will tell you that within 2 or 3 days of the election, actually, Lewis, you know it too. Within 2 or 3 days of the election in November, if it took that long, I looked at the numbers and I said, wait a minute. This ain't adding up. There's something that's not right about this. I think there was some manipulating going on with votes and machines. So what is now happening? And I did not understand, Gloria, why you have Vice President Harris. She raised over $1 billion. Why she didn't say, okay, we'll take 50 million of it and pay for recounts in several states, a hand recount, so we can see if the hand recounts are the same as the numbers that the machines are telling us, the computers are telling us. If they're the same, then you concede. If they're different, you say, hold up, wait a minute, and you try and figure it out. But they didn't do that, in part because they were afraid that the maggots, MAGATS, that the maggots would lose their minds and have tantrums and riot. And so they decided, well, we're not going to be like you all. We're not going to question the results. We're going to accept the results, but they were wrong. And so now you have voting experts who are coming out saying that the numbers don't add up.
They don't.
It is clear that there was something going on with the tabulation of the votes as far as the computers were concerned. The computers were messed with. The vote totals are not right. And here's the thing, to let you know how obvious it is. Delegate Chang, if I'm going to steal an election, I'm going to win a majority of the vote. I'm going to win comfortably. I'm going to have 52, 53, 54% when I win. That they stole votes and he still couldn't get to 50%. That tells you everything you need to know right there.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were doing apparently to bolster his popular vote totals. There are some counties and precincts in New York, blue state, blue precincts, where, and I'm just going to throw these figures out, round figures.
It's Rockland.
So that, but there's more than Rockland. That, let's say Gloria Dent is that Bracey, I'm going to do it to you. That Bracey is Trump and Gloria Dent is Harris. And in a particular precinct or county, Dent, who's running for re-election to the U.S. Senate, Kirsten Gillibrand won out of 600 votes cast, she won 570 of them. Trump got about 20 and then whatever, the others. But when they got to the president, Trump got 500 and some of them. Harris got 3 or 2 or 0.
Yep.
In a blue state, in a blue precinct, in a precinct where the Senate candidate won going away. But then the numbers flipped, so 570 people out of 600 votes cast vote for Gillibrand, but then 560 of them vote for Trump and only 3 vote for Harris. Does that make any sense at all?
Mathematically impossible.
It's impossible. So it's clear that the election was probably stolen. Now people will say, well, it's too late. There's nothing we can do. The Congress certified the figures. And it's like, okay, tell that to the guys that played football at Penn State from the 80s until the 2000s under Joe Paterno. And when they decided that they were going to go after Paterno for possibly turning a blind eye to his assistant coach who was molesting kids, and they took hundreds of victories and 2 or 3 national championships away from Penn State, just like that.
That's
Or
right.
if you win a medal in the Olympics and then later on it turns out that you were juicing or something, what do? They say, bring it back, and whoever finished behind you in that race, they give them the medal instead. So I don't buy this, well, it's too late, we got to deal with this for 4 years. The hell we do.
Mm-mm.
In 4 years, what's going to be left? We see what they're doing right now. And trust and believe, if they stole votes for the presidential race, I'm not just going to, if I'm doing it, I'm not going to steal votes for the president. I'm going to steal votes so that the Congress and the Senate are also majority of what the president is, so that he can do whatever he wants to do. I promise you, as sure as I'm sitting here, and I knew it in November, they cheated, and now they are taking us to town while they can. And the only thing that's going to stop it, because they'll say, well, it's too late, we can't do anything, if millions and millions and millions of Americans get in the street, when these numbers come out and they become more known, and they say, this is a national strike. We're not going to school. We're not going to work. We're not doing a thing until you all address this. And don't tell us we got to wait till 2028.
That's right. I'm glad you said that.
We're going to have another election in the next however many weeks. And there's a minister now that does not have, he didn't want a female president. Well, that's just stupid. Whatever. You want a female president or a clown president, take your pick.
They chose the clown. That wasn't the question.
Okay, but everybody didn't choose it. That's the point. They stole it so that the clown would appear to have won. But
You
I'm
know,
saying
but
we're not doing anything until there's another election with paper ballots.
you
Man,
know,
messing
Reverend
with
Gillette,
y'all. You don't
I
get to
don't
steal a
disagree
thing.
with
Paper ballots.
That's
Huh?
I
right.
don't disagree with you or you know, Lewis about the election and the election process.
Hmm.
But you know, Democrats have to be diehard Democrats. We have to really stop not wanting to vote because we don't like or there's one issue that you firmly are against. You know, I live in Maryland, but I'm from down south. You know, born in Greensboro, Alabama, and raised in Georgia. Joined the military, go there every summer. I can tell you unequivocally that there were a lot of ads that were ran in the South about the gender, transgender, about how the communities of colors were being uh, eradicated because of all the government allowing people to have the transgender and sex change and all this stuff. And so it just took a lot of things away from the Democratic Party. And so the reason I say that is that if you're a Republican, Republicans vote as it doesn't matter how radical they are, how they don't care. They vote. They're going to vote for a Republican. They may not like the Republican in office, but they're just going to hang. They're going to stick it out. Where Democrats just don't vote at all. I think that's to a detriment. I heard somebody say there's 80 million people out there that just didn't vote at all.
80
Like
million.
80 million.
Right.
There's nothing for you to, so the election shouldn't even be close when there's 80 million people out there that didn't vote. So why do I say that is that I think that for me, I knew that that no one was gonna put up a fight about the election. It didn't matter the first time, it's not gonna matter the second time. And to be honest with you, the voting voting process in and of itself, once you have an electronic voting ballot process, you have already created a vulnerability in the voting process. And so because of that, and because technology, because we're moving so fast, we didn't put things in place to mitigate the people that could steal elections. If they can steal money from a bank, come on, you know they can steal from these poor voting booths that are sitting inside of schools. Come on. It doesn't make sense to believe that our election is without fault. So because of that, I think that's where we really need to focus at is in the Democratic Party is focus on laws that are going to be stringent enough to where we can avoid or avert someone from doing something that's strong as stealing an election. But no, we spent the last 4 years trying to prove that the 2016 election was stolen. Are you serious? The presidency is over with, and we're still talking about it. He's completed the election, but we didn't take the next 4 years and put place in process to make sure that the next election could not be that vulnerable. And by the way, we still haven't did that. They doubled down on you in 2024 to make sure that they won the election. So all they did is getting better. So the information that was collected from places like Dodge, they didn't go in to just fire federal governments. That was a decoy. All they really did is obtain as much technology as they can to be able to use that technology against individuals that are creating technology so that they can be putting themselves in a better position to become even more billionaires. And how much money do you need? But what I do think as a military person is that I don't take kindness, and I will never vote for a person that threatens the security of the United States of America. I will never, ever vote for an individual that do not understand that you cannot take the security of America for granted. There are countries around here that no matter how much they smile in your face, they will smile in your face just like American soldiers do every single day, or American surgeons, remember, we smile in your face and we'll cut your throat at the same time. Mm-hmm. Guess what? That is how we're trained, and we will do it. So when I hear people talking about we are friends with Russia or I like the guy that's in, come on, these guys do not like you as Americans. This is why we have the strongest fighting force that we do. So while part of me look at the big, beautiful bill and say, we do need to increase our infrastructure and our military because we are going to war. And if we are going to war, I want to make sure that America has the necessary infrastructure to fight, win, and on the battlefield and protect our service members and eliminate as many deaths as possible. So I don't disagree that we have to do that. But the purpose of it wasn't for that. The purpose of it was to create your own army against the American people. I mean, let's be real about this. So for me, these are the things that are serious that needs to be stopped. Yeah, all the other stuff is wrong too, but let's put laws on the books that eliminate a person ever in the history of America being able to steal an election ever again, because this is the impact.
That's right.
Well,
Indeed.
two things very
And-
quickly.
I know our time is getting short. We're over
ahead.
2 hours now.
Or just real quick, in my book, Stop Falling for the Okie Doke, How the Lie of Race Continues to Undermine Our Country. I think it's pages 47 through 40. Let me see, where is the camera here? 47 through 49. And in there, I cite the work of Athan Gibbs. He was an accountant who, after the election travesty in 2020, when Gore was declared the winner of Florida, and then there's like, wait a minute, let's look at that again. And by the time they did what they did, he supposedly lost. And he said it didn't make, as a person who was an accountant, he was used to having a paper trail, documentation for numbers to back those things up. And so he developed a voting machine called the True Vote Machine, which basically you would cast your vote, then you would print it out,
Yep.
see that what you cast is what you get in your hand, and then you would drop the paper ballot in the locked box beside the machine, so that therefore there would be a paper trail for the votes.
Mm-hmm.
Athan Gibbs was mysteriously killed in an accident with an 18-wheeler. But this is somebody in 2001, 2002 that's trying to do that. And here we are, a quarter of a century later, still dealing with this. But Gloria, one thing you said I'm going to disagree with you on. You were talking about as far as the money is concerned. Our defense budget is $750 billion, over $750 billion. That's more money than the next 25 countries combined, 21 or 22 of whom are our allies. We are spending too much. We got plenty of stuff.
Too much.
Nobody has more stuff than we do, but we're not investing in the country. And we're not investing in our citizens, and we're not investing in people in rural areas. Rural hospitals going to close in the richest country in the world, really? So that we can have a strong defense without overspending like they're going to do. Because you know as well as I do that there are projects sometimes that members of Congress want to have to go to particular bases or whatever. And the military is even saying, we don't need that here. But Congress is insisting because they're bringing home the bacon.
Mm-hmm.
So they need, if you want to look for fraud, waste, and abuse,
Go there.
go to the Department of Defense first.
That's right.
I don't disagree with you. I just say that I just want to make sure that our military stay elite. So when I look at those the numbers that they're putting out there, I do agree that there's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. But I don't think that we created any efficiencies in the Department of Efficiency over the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Look, the conversation, I'm glad we gave ourselves 2 hours, because one thing we must do this again. And it turns out this was like a pre-conversation to the bill. And hopefully real soon, after whatever happens, in the House, we can come back before the month is out and continue the conversation. I'm sure there'll be plenty other topics that we can add to the conversation. But what I like about this conversation, we had an opportunity to disagree. We had an opportunity to, sometimes when we have those constructive conversations and we disagree, we learn some things about each other, and we learn some things that for people that have open minds might say, I never thought of it that way. So I'm glad that we had this conversation and it went the way it went. And Lewis, you can always spark some kind of controversy, which I love that about you, brother. So thanks everybody for coming on. And what I want to do now is give everybody an opportunity to have closing remarks, and before we actually close out. And stay tuned, as I'll probably be contacting you real soon for a follow-up conversation that we need to have. And our gentlemen, I'll start with ladies first.
So first of all, like I said earlier, I just want to thank everybody. I know I'm in the midst of greatness when I'm listening to everybody's opinion. I thank you for the respect to be allowed to just have an opinion and not be persecuted for that opinion. I still believe that, America is the greatest country there is on this earth, and I fought for this country. But that also means that I fought for an opportunity to have my voice and have my voice be heard. I am going to continue to fight the good fight and not allow, just because of the things that are happening in our country today, to believe that that's going to push me out of this country. It's not. It's going to push me to fight for this country. And it's going to push me to fight to make sure that everybody is educated, not only on the voting system, but educated in our American public system. The American education system is sought after by many countries. We hear all the time that people are talking about, STEM education or the STEAM education, or China is ahead of us in this and China is ahead of that. You know what? China's sending their people to get educated right here in good old United States of America. So I'm saying that to tell you that it isn't that we can't have access, that we don't have, that have the best education system. It is the thing like the big, beautiful bill that is eliminating those opportunities to gain that access. And so for me, I stand firmly against this. I will be reaching out to everyone that's one of my congressmen and congresswomen to let them know that I am against this and I strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Chang.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Slayman, Lewis, and Pastor Tillett and Dr. Dent. It's great being on the podcast this evening. And really, as a member of the state legislature in Maryland, just want to really convey the message that whether you're in Virginia or Maryland, that really state legislatures are really the last line of defense. And they're doing all they can to really protect against these really atrocious decisions that are being made in Washington, D.C. And there's a couple different national organizations that state legislatures are part of, whether it be the National Conference of State Legislatures or Council of State Governments. And there is a lot of unity with regards to how state governments work, and this includes the territories of the United States, and really monitoring what goes on the federal level. And this was actually before the big, be a bogus bill or the ugly bill, or whatever you want to call it, the misnomer. But the really, even getting past this, that the state legislatures are really, at the grassroots level for constituents. And so we're doing all we can in the state of Maryland to protect what we have, and to continue to fight these very bad policies that are coming out of Washington, D.C. But thank you very much, everyone, for a great evening.
Okay, Reverend.
There's a scripture in Timothy, I think it's 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, where it says that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and either a sound mind or self-discipline, depending upon the translation. And right now, as you heard Dr. Dent say, I put on the uniform, I took the oath, I defended this nation, I ain't going anywhere. And most people can't afford to leave. I think if more people could, they would, but they can't. So we have to stay and fight. And I'm not talking about fighting in the streets, but I am talking about fighting in boardrooms and state legislatures and county councils, county commissions, and the Congress. So we have to get ready to fight. We can't give up, because if we give up, the country will be lost to us. Do not give up. Resist, rebel, and then rebuild.
Thank you for saying those things, Reverend. And James, I'm not gonna be long. I want to spend this time letting everybody know that this was a special 2-hour plus show that I asked James to do here a while back, and we finally worked it out where we can get a 2-hour show. And as you can see, James, we still haven't touched everything yet. We still have a lot of things to talk about. After 2 hours, we still haven't really broken the iceberg yet. But I want to take the time to just to say, I want to thank everyone who asked to come on the show, who appeared. Thank you, Dr. Dent. Thank you, Mark. I'll be seeing you in the mall soon. And Reverend, I thank you always. But I really want to thank my brother from another mother, Mr. James Overton, for putting on this program and allowing me to have a few minutes to vent my my anger. That's what it is. Thank you very much, and thank all of you for attending today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you, Lewis, for suggesting the guests that we have on. I really enjoyed them and look forward to having them back on the show. And one thing about this show, don't have to ask anybody. We just do it. We are in control. But anyway, thanks everybody for watching. We appreciate you, and make sure you share. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. And we'll see you next time. We're going to do this again before the month is out. So this is
Thanks, everybody.
God bless
Thanks for
you.
being a part of the Slim Nation. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time.
Take care.